Hi everyone, I'm here today to have a chat about beginnings, about self-doubt and about the in-between spaces. I had a chat with my friend Kirsty. Kirsty Logan is also a writer, and one time when she was down in London recently, we sat down and we decided to have a chat about these things. It's really casual. We just eaten some donuts, we had a cup of tea, and we had a brief period to record a podcast before we each had to go off and do our own separate things. And we'd been writing in the Welcome Library the day before, and we wanted to have a chat with you. So Kirsty has written 5 books. She is the author of The Grace Keepers and The Gloaming, 2 novels and 3 short story collections. We've got The Rental Heart, which was her first one, this one, A Portable Shelter, and her latest is coming out next month in October. This is Things We Say in the Dark. If you like my fiction, you'll probably like her fiction, and vice versa. We both like fairy tales, we're both queer writers, we both like magical realism, etc. You get the picture. So I sat down with Kirsty and we just had a really casual chat about writing and what it's like to write and starting new projects. Yeah, and if you would like to listen, that would be lovely. This is actually an episode of my podcast, Books with Jen. So if you would prefer to download this to listen while you're out and about, there'll be a link in the description box down below. Otherwise, you can just keep on listening to this video. The picture will go away and it'll just be an audio file. If you would like to catch up with previous episodes of this podcast, I'll also link them down below. I've spoken with many different authors. I think there are about 23 episodes of the podcast now, and they go up every couple of months. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand you over to, me and Kirsty when we were chatting about writing. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll speak to you very soon. Lots of bookish love. Bye. We've just had donuts. I think that is now my prerequisite for recording podcasts, is that I must fill myself up with a donut first. So I'm very full of donuts, and that's very nice. And we're in the Penguin flat, which I've never been in before. It's very nice. Yes. It's cozy.
I feel very fancy staying here, as if I'm a proper author or something.
You are a proper author.
I know, but I just keep thinking this is not for the likes of me.
Oh, we've been having these conversations about self-doubt and how neither of us know what we're doing. But we kind of do know what we're doing. Yeah. We do. And also we can champion each other. I like that.
And then you end up having these conversations where you're so amazed when someone also has self-doubt. You go, yes, but you're a proper writer. I'm just an idiot. But you, proper.
We had this conversation the other day when we were talking about what we consider to be big famous writers that we've met. And they all have self-doubt. And it's just a whole ridiculous system.
Yeah, and I'd had a conversation with my agent the day before, and a very kind of famous, successful writer that she represents apparently was complaining that they hadn't achieved as much as some other even more famous and successful writer. And you think, goodness me, it never ends, does it?
No, it doesn't. And because we have self-doubt, therefore we are writers, because that's what writers have. Congratulations to both of us.
Yeah, if we were satisfied with things as they were, we would just not make things up, I suppose.
It's true. That's true. So I wanted to have a chat about the in-between spaces, so the spaces between books, which is where we spend, I would say, most of our time, actually. Broadly speaking, like between the releases of books, that's where we spend most of our time. But then within that, there are in-between spaces between ideas and trying to figure out what is working. What point are you at right now in the in-between space between your books?
Oh, it's just so funny. Like, even as you were saying that, I was like, are we ever in between books? Because the actual release of a book is such a short space of time. And by the time a book is actually published, for us it's from years ago. You're like,
I have to reread my book so that I can talk about it at book events, because I'm like, oh yeah, that is what I wrote, because it was several years ago, or at least 1 year ago. And you're on to the next project by then, right?
Yeah. I've got a book coming out Halloween this year.
Yes.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I started that book 2 years ago. Yeah. So to me, that's Kirsty from 2 years ago. That's her brain, and I feel like I'm such a different person now.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be like that. And then I'm never not working on a book. So I'm working on a novel now, like actually working on it, as in I have begun writing it. Yeah. But then I'm also making notes and planning for about another 3 or 4 books, which will be kind of a long time in the making. So I always say, I research books for 3 or 4 years, which sounds like a long time, but it's not as if every day I'm sitting down 8 hours a day researching. It's like, it's just in your head, and then maybe somebody says something, or maybe you see a painting or see something in a film or hear a song or something, and you think, I can use that. So it's just this sort of gathering of notes and inspirations and colours and different things, and it sort of, by the time in a few years that you actually sit down to write, it's all coalesced and feels more complete. It's such a messy thing, and I'm obsessed. I don't know about you, I'm obsessed with these books about how to write, and I nearly borrowed from the library the other day a book called How to Write Your First Novel.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I can't do that because I know all the librarians and they're going to look at me like, what are you doing?
Kirsty, you did that already.
Yeah, but you can't help feeling like there must be an easier way.
Yes, exactly, that there must be some kind of method or trick out there that someone's not told you.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But you go back to what you're saying, so you feel like you're a collector of things.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like the things that you collect, I think we're like magpies, right? We're always looking for pretty things and ideas and things to not steal, use.
Yes.
Utilise.
Mm-hmm.
Borrow.
Reimagine.
Yes, exactly. Look at us, like walking thesauruses.
No, but like you never steal anything wholesale.
Oh God, no.
But it's just these little bits of things.
Little bits, little pretty things that you can shine a different kind of light on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like when you're collecting and you have lots of projects, future projects in mind, you then try to work out where the pretty thing can go, like which project is that suitable for? Yeah.
All the time. And I also have a big notebook of stuff that I don't know exactly where it will go yet. So I spend a lot of time, researching things, and it's basically just read books, and then if something's interesting you write it down, and maybe you can see what it'll fit into and maybe you can't.
Yeah.
But then you never know what will spark something in the future.
Can you remember that kind of moment for a book that's already out, something that you discovered where you thought that's a big thing that I hadn't thought of before, that's going to help me?
I remember for the Gracekeepers there were a few moments like that. So I remember the initial idea was when I was on a boat and I saw a life buoy kind of thing over a cage over a light. It looked like a bird cage. That's how that started.
Yeah.
And then different elements all came together as well. Like I remember, I was actually, believe it or not, really far through the book before Callanish had gills.
Oh, okay.
Which is stupid because that's the whole point of the book.
Yeah, but sometimes points of books elude us.
Yeah, so I was more than halfway through the book, and I had been reading a different book where it wasn't gills that the character had. She had some other element to her physical self. I think she had a limp or something, and I was just kind of thinking about that. That's really interesting. I think it's interesting the way that physical difference is used within the story, and then it just suddenly came to me, oh, you idiot, of course that should be in this book. It makes everything come together, it makes everything make sense. So quite often it's not till I'm quite far through that I realise what I'm actually saying, or what the point of it is.
You can unlock something. I think that's a fun thing about writing, is that you can plant Easter eggs later. Like when you figured something out, almost like you're the reader of your own book, and you're like, oh yes, okay, so in order for that to be true, I must travel back in time and put these little pointers in. I mean, we like everyone to think that we have it all figured out from the beginning, and that but actually I don't want people to think that. I don't want people to think that, because that sounds easy. Writing is not easy. It's a case of discovery and unearthing things, and then making a mess, as you say, and then tidying up.
You're like building a high wall from scratch every time, and like you always think, oh, it's going to be easier this time, but you still always have to start right at the bottom, putting the basic layer on. This is not a very good metaphor, but I always think it'll be easier next time, and it sort of never is. But maybe it shouldn't be, because then you're pushing yourself every time.
And we were saying this when we sit down to write a new book. We forget how to do it entirely.
I literally forgot. I went and I was so excited. I'd been wanting to start this new novel for ages. In September I had this residency. I was really looking forward to it. I was like, I'm so ready to begin. I've got all my notes. I know exactly what the first few chapters are going to be. And then the very first day I sat down at my laptop and it literally had forgotten how to write a sentence.
I wonder if writing a book is like giving birth. You know how they say that you forget the pain, otherwise you would never do it again? I think that's it. You forget, because otherwise you wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't. So we sit down and we're like, okay, so we do this again. How do we do this again?
How do I do that? What's that like? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like a split self thing, isn't it, between the person or the life you have to lead while you're writing a book, and then what it's like when you're promoting said book. Obviously, you are still the same person, and you're just utilising yourself in a different kind of way. But I do find it very strange, especially if I'm working on a book we both probably always are, writing a different book while promoting one, because there's such different headspaces and different ways of being that actually I find don't help each other. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I have two pictures of myself in my head.
Okay.
And one is Tilda Swinton as the Ice Queen.
Yes.
Which is who I try and be when I'm promoting.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go on stage, I try and think Tilda Swinton as the Ice Queen.
And you always wear fabulous dresses, always.
That helps me to kind of get into character, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, it is me, but it's a more elegant, unruffled me, because I am quite a ruffled person.
Crying at our writing desk.
Exactly. Yeah. And now the other part of me, which to be honest is the 90% part of me, is Gollum. And that's who I feel I am inside.
Okay.
Just this kind of like gnarled little apologetic
creature in the dark.
Yeah, that's what I think I am. So in my moments where my confidence is shaken, I literally feel like hunching into myself and just like retreating into a little cave.
Yeah.
And that's who I feel like I am most of the time.
Nice.
Yeah. I know people usually laugh when I say that. I'm waiting for the day when someone goes, "Oh yeah, I can see that. You do look like Gollum."
No, you do not. You do not look like Gollum at all.
Okay. I'm waiting. It'll come one day.
Okay.
But yeah, it's weird, isn't it? You wouldn't think that a person can be the Ice Queen and Gollum, but I think that's who we are. We're this kind of public-facing person, and we want to be so unruffled and elegant, and well, that's who I want to be anyway. But then to be a writer, I don't think you can write. Well, I can't write elegantly and unruffledly. I have to be a bit of a little creep in a cave to write, because you have to go inside yourself and look at the kind of unpleasant parts of yourself that you don't really like in order to write, I think.
In order to understand humans and therefore write about them.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just writing about people who are pure surface all the time.
Yeah.
Which is very boring.
It's very boring, and people are not like that. No.
No, well, I hope not.
Hope not.
I don't know people like that.
We're looking at each other like we kind of do know people like that.
Yeah. 2019 is my year of positivity. I'm not going to deal with people like that.
No, leave them behind.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So can you tell us a little bit about the kind of research that you're doing? So we spent a day at the Wellcome Library, which is a lovely place. You should all go there. Don't all go there, because we would like to get a table there, but go. Some of you can go there. What did you find out when you were researching there the other day?
Well, so I was researching middle-aged women in the Middle Ages, which, delightfully, there were 2 books about that. You wouldn't have thought that there would be, but the breadth of people's research interests is a constant delight to me. So I learned a lot about that, and about how medieval people thought of time. Of course, we can never really know, because particularly poor people left no records, so we can never really know what people thought. But a lot of scholars are saying that medieval people thought of time differently. So, there's lots of the memento mori. I don't know if you've seen those pictures of the skeletons dancing, or skeleton parades. There were lots of relics, saints' relics, things like that. So the sort of line between life and death was seen as a bit more porous than we might think of it. There were, passion plays and plays where people came back from the dead and things. So
well, that makes sense though, isn't it? I mean, lack of I guess scientific answers, but also death was so much more a part of society. People died at home, like they weren't carted off to a hospital somewhere. Death was, cliche, a part of life.
Yeah, I mean, people would have seen birth and death more so than we have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. I also was at the V&A, and I learned about glass. And I learned that if you just make glass and don't add anything to it, it's green. And if you want it to be clear, you add a thing to it. I don't know can't remember the name of it. But if you add too much, it goes pink. So that's why you get so much green and pink glass.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I liked.
Thank you for the knowledge.
There we go. And I can't remember the names of anything. That's such a typical writer thing.
It is. I'm like, I found out this amazing thing. Let me tell you about it in a very non-specific way.
There's this guy in this year,
Yeah.
and he did this thing, and I know all about the thing, but I don't know who did it or when.
But that's why we're storytellers, because we
Yeah.
just fill in the gaps with other stuff.
Yeah, well, because also now that I'm researching medieval times, and every time I try and talk to someone who knows a lot about it, they say, well what period are you looking at? Because it's obviously covers a long time period, and I'm not really, it's not set in a specific time.
Like, I'm not a historian, so...
No, I'm doing my own, it's not historical fiction, it's sort of fantastical fiction, but set in the past. But yeah, I think it's because the real world is very messy, and it doesn't tell us a neat story, whereas we want to tell a neat story. So like a lot of witches in the book, and there are witch trials, but all that came much later, kind of 1600s, really, if we're talking the more organised witch trials, which doesn't suit my narrative. So I'm like, yeah, chuck it in.
Yeah.
It's fiction.
It's fiction.
I'm not saying it's historically accurate in any way.
Good.
I always say that, like, nothing that I do, you know, if you're going to find factual problems with it, I'm fine with that.
I mean, I remember saying to my friend Jean, I was like, I've just read this great book, and in this book there was this thing about like the relationship between a grandmother and a grandfather, and I told it to her, and she went, that wasn't in the book, that's my grandparents, and I told you that story last week. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Sometimes the stories just, you know, they just blend together.
I quite often don't know if I've been to a specific place, or I've read about it, or I've seen it in a film, or I've just imagined it, and that's troubling.
No, it just means that we exist in all the creative spaces equally.
We have very vivid inner lives.
Yeah, I mean, I said that in the podcast that I did with Anna Maria, I used to I used to lie in my diary when I was younger. I thought I could trick my older self. I thought, like, I didn't even make up anything interesting, I would just embellish my day slightly. And so I thought when I came back and read the book when I was older that I would think I was really cool. But I read it and I was like, oh no, that didn't happen. Like, I remembered, obviously. But yeah, that's why we write fiction, right?
Wow. I never did that. But that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I don't do that anymore. Just so you know. Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up. Okay, so both of us have to go do some work. So
do our actual jobs.
So where can people find you, Kirsty? Because you have a podcast too.
I do have a podcast. My podcast is called Teenage Scream, and it is about 90s teen horror, point horror, Goosebumps, Fear Street. We're also going to start doing some films, like Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, things like that. And I do that with the writer Heather Parry, and I love it, and it's great. Well, I think it's great. I enjoy doing it. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm Kirsty Logan on everything. And my website is also kirstylogan.com.
Amazing. And before we go, tell us a little about your short story collection that's coming out in October.
It's out on Halloween. It's called Things We Say in the Dark, and it is a book of dark feminist horror stories.
And it's amazing. Get excited.
Thank you. I wrote some of it with you there.
You did? Yeah. Can I take credit? I'm gonna say not? I co-wrote it. There we go. I sat next to you.
I weirdly do remember I did have a character in one of my other books called Jen.
I get so many messages about that.
By like a massive coincidence.
Yeah.
I get emails a lot because there's a non-player character in World of Warcraft called Kirsty Logan. Oh. It's not me. It's nothing to do with me. Massive coincidence.
That's a shame.
I know. I can pretend it is me, but it's not. She lives in Booty Bay.
Booty Bay.
She's a pirate.
Let's go there.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.